Welcome to Alienating the Audience, a show that explores the deeper side of science fiction. I'm Andrew Heaton, the thinking man's nerd. Today we're reconvening Book Club to discuss the first 15 lives of Harry August. And before we dive in, Mr. Josh Jennings is going to narrate the first chapter to get you stoked. Let's go!
The First 15 Lives of Harry August. Chapter 1. The second cataclysm began in my 11th life in 1996. I was dying my usual death, slipping away in a warm morphine haze, which she interrupted like an ice cube down my spine. She was 7. I was 78. She had straight blonde hair, worn in a long pigtail down her back. I had bright white hair, or at least the remnants of the same. I wore a hospital gown designed for sterile humility. She, bright blue school uniform and a felt cap. She perched on the side of my bed, her feet dangling off it, and peered into my eyes. She examined the heart monitor plugged into my chest, observed where I disconnected the alarm, felt for my pulse, and said, "I nearly missed you, Dr. August." Her German was Berlin high, but she could have addressed me in any language of the world and still passed for respectable. She scratched at the back of her left leg, where her white knee-length socks had begun to itch from the rain outside. While scratching, she said, "I need to send a message back through time, if time can be said to be important here. As you're conveniently dying, I ask you to relay it to the clubs of your origin, as it has been passed down to me." I tried to speak, but the words tumbled together on my tongue, and I said nothing. "The world is ending," she said. "The message has come down from child to adult, passed back down the generations from 1,000 years forward in time. The world is ending and we cannot prevent it, so now it's up to you." I found that Thai was the only language which wanted to pass my lips in any coherent form, and the only word which I seemed capable of forming was, "Why?" Not, I hasten to add, why was the world ending? Why did it matter? She smiled and understood my meaning without needing it to be said. She leaned in close and murmured in my ear, "The world is ending as it always must, but the end of the world is getting faster." That was the beginning of the end.
Hey! Ashland Viscosi is back, and so is Nick Sperdute. Hello, gang.
Hi.
Hi.
And we're going to do Book Club again.
Hi.
Yay.
Yep.
I love how Book Club has more or less been you recommending me books. Turns out I love them. And about a week later, it's like, hey, we should probably do a book club.
Yeah. I got to say, Ashland, I feel like the pressure is mounting because I've been like 3 for 3 on this. And
I know.
The day will come where there's a dud, and I'll be like, I'm sorry. Like, eventually the king has to be slain.
No. Statistically, you have to have a dud or one that I just don't love as much. It hasn't happened yet. Mm-hmm. So, you know,
although I got
hope for the future.
This one, though, I was very happy to recommend to you because I loved this book. I like just right out the gate, I thought it was a fantastic work and really, I'd say it's like one of my top favorite novels.
Yeah, it's great.
Wow. And Nick, you're making very skeptical faces.
That's just my face.
What did I love on this book? What's
face.
going on in your world?
No, I enjoyed it.
You just have resting Nick face?
Yeah, basically. I mean, technically always.
Yeah,
but
that's right. It's true. You have to be actively pursuing some other expression in order to avoid that.
No, I really did enjoy the book. I just finished it, which we talked about recently, in preparation. I like to kind of go up to the wire. You know, it's very fresh.
You want there to be adrenaline in your system as you're reading. Like you basically are doing the movie Speed only with a novel.
Yeah, well, this one I did the audio book version of. Because
that'd be interesting.
I ride the train a bunch now. I'm going back to work, so I'm on the train more often. And it's just so much easier to get done because I can't read on the train. I get motion sick too quick. So this is the only way to, like, the extra time I have to use it this way. So I did it but I also do it at, like, 1.5 speed so that I get through it a little quicker. Nice. I don't miss things. Because the way not to miss things if you're reading at 1.5 speed, a little bit of an insight here for anybody
that doesn't. Drink a lot of coffee?
Well, that, but also start it at 2.5 speed. for a couple seconds and then back it down to 1.5.
Whoa,
and
I
it'll
can't even
all
understand
sound
these
normal.
people. Oh, this is much better. Yeah,
I'm
that
not
makes
joking.
sense.
100%. So if I'm talking really, really fast to you and you don't really understand what I say, and then you back down, and then I'm still
Right.
going faster than I normally speak, but you can understand it. And that was a
Right.
heck of an example, if I do say so
That's
myself.
brilliant.
Thank
No,
you.
that's a key insight.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say, like, pay attention. It's like, well, okay, of course.
Close
but
your eyes.
This is better. Yeah. Just imagine. Just listen.
Put yourself in the
I'll
world.
add, I so enjoy when I find a novel like this because as part of my other podcast, I have to do so much nonfiction reading where I interview people, and when I do that, I'm having to constantly take notes. And by the way, I enjoy this. I'm not complaining, but it's a very
You're
engaged.
saying you didn't take any notes?
I didn't take any notes on this one. I just read it for fun.
Jesus.
I just
mean,
yeah,
Ashland and I
all-
sent each other so many notes
all,
back and
all
forth
of,
about
did.
all
this.
of the notes I wrote
Yeah, about 12 pages.
feverishly in Nick Sperdute style about 40 minutes ago while going, oh man,
Wow, speed.
I read this 5 years ago. I need to look up the character names again so I don't sound like an idiot like I did last time we did this. And
Proper. Well done.
So I'll go ahead and frame the book for people. So
Yeah.
Harry August, the protagonist in the book, is born in Berwick-upon-Tweed in 1919. And he lives a full life, and he dies, and he's reincarnated to the exact same body in Berwick-upon-Tweed in 1919, and then again, and so on and so forth. And so he is kind of like it's like Groundhog Day on a very macro, very literary level. And about third or fourth life, he realizes there are other people that have the same phenomenon happening. And just a fantastic book in that regard. I loved the we call this time travel, or is Groundhog Day become a genre? Where do we put this?
Well, I think that it comes off at the beginning like a Groundhog Day, but there are actual impactful things that can happen.
Right. Yeah.
So the world can change based
Right.
on what happens, as opposed to Groundhog Day, no matter what he does,
Right.
he goes back to the exact
Right.
same spot no matter what. Whereas this case,
Right.
it's very clear that things happen and things change, and thus all of the people throughout history, which we'll get into, that make up the Cronus Club, which we should mention, which is the group of people that we know of that correspond with each other throughout time, that also all have the same phenomenon where they come back and live their lives over and over and over and over again. So we see that. I think it is kind of the same genre, with just for the first couple chapters, and then it just expands.
Yeah.
But it's still probably technically the same sort
Well,
of.
I think
story.
you've hit on a major difference between Groundhog Day and the first 15 Lives of Harry August.
title?
Yes, the titles are
Very,
very
very
different. Bill Murray does a piss poor job in the first 15 Lives of Harry August. He doesn't even show up till the end. Then it's just
God,
a
I would
weird
watch
cameo.
that. Are you kidding me?
Oh no, I would love to see I
don't know who he would play,
an
but-
aging Bill Murray do
Yeah.
this as his magnum opus of dramatic acting. But two very significant differences are that you're right. Part of Groundhog Day is coming to grips with the fact that everything you do is pointless. It's only the moment that matters in Groundhog Day, right? There is no future that you can plan on. Whereas in the first 15 Lives of Harry August, you're interacting. It's just you're reborn into the timeline, but you are affecting things that happen after you.
Correct.
And I feel like a
Right.
significant part of the book is trying to figure out when is it appropriate to do that. Whereas with Groundhog Day,
Right.
you can kind of do whatever you want. Whereas in this book, it's should I kill Hitler? Should I stop JFK
Right.
from getting assassinated? And then the
Right.
other.
Well,
Go ahead.
Well,
Ashland.
there's seemingly also rules that say that you can't really affect those milestone moments.
Right.
Yeah.
But then also to the point of why it is different than Groundhog Day, and really what is the catalyst for the story once it picks up, is really that idea of he actually has to save what's going to happen in the
Right.
future and figure out what has caused this shift that has made the end of time come sooner than it should.
Yeah.
And there are other people, which is another big thing, because in Groundhog Day, Bill Murray is the only immortal, in effect.
Yeah.
Everybody else, depending on how we look at it, instantly has their memories cleared, or alternately,
Yeah.
they're not subject.
Are you familiar? Do you read much of X-Men, the contemporary stuff like House of X and Powers of X?
No.
It's very, very much like Moira X, who has the ability to reincarnate. And so in that series, it came out, I feel like last summer is when those runs came out. But it was all around that exact idea as she regenerates back into her same body. So it was very similar to reading that story, just in the sense of how that's handled.
The thing that I kept, I didn't infer this when I was reading the book, but the thing that really struck me in feverishly contemplating it in preparation to speak to you all is I feel like there's some really strong Buddhist themes in it, in that even some of the terminology, because in the book Claire North uses Kalchakra, which is a Buddhist term. It means wheel of time, and Urabora is in
the snake eating
the
its
snake
tail.
eating its own tail, which I think is more of a general thing. But the idea of like being like in Buddhism, there's samsara, and it's the idea that you're reincarnated back into this ceaseless pattern of life and death and rebirth, and you want to get to the point where you can break out of it, or where you realize it's you want to defy that cycle, right? And that's very much present in this book. And then the other thing that I thought was present that I didn't really pick up on as I read it is in Buddhism. It's not good to hold things tightly with a closed fist. You want to be able to let things go. You want to be okay with change. You want to be okay with, like, I love someone, but they can go have their own relationship outside of me. I'm not going to grip people. I'm not going to hold on to stuff. I'm going to let stuff
detachment.
go. Exactly,
Yeah,
detachment.
exactly.
Well, way better. Thank you. You summarized what I was saying in one word. And I feel like that's something that Harry August really struggles with throughout his travels. So we as noted in the title of the book, we see the first 15 lives of Harry August. But even at like life 15, he's still really bothered about being abandoned by his parents. He's still very hung up on his first wife, even though this is several hundred years after their wedding vows chronologically.
Well, I mean, I think that would take me like 20, 21 lives too. Me personally, I'm just saying.
I mean, the first love.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, that's a big one.
We call Megan a 22-life girl.
Yeah.
And,
after 23rd life,
that's
I'm
where
on
the
and
expression
moving.
comes
That's where that off-choose expression comes from.
Here's what I'll say is,
Yeah.
I noticed something about this book, and this book, this is really funny to me because I really was thinking of this as I read it. It was like, every life, I was like, yeah, I think this is how Andrew would have lived through this. Like, this seemed like so Andrew Heaton
Religious,
to me.
scientist.
Well,
if
there's
he had
that point-
comedian and politician at some point, then it would
There's
have
that
fit
point
all
where
the
he
boxes.
goes through and he's like, and I tried out all these other religions, and I've tried out all these other professions, and I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure Andrew would like.
Yeah.
I gotta
he's,
say,
like,
I'm doing
thriving
really
and
well
keep
for
learning.
36. Yeah,
that's the thing.
I've really compressed this all down pretty quick.
Well, that's the thing is, like, he doesn't stop learning and trying
Right.
to gain
Right.
more and more knowledge throughout
Right.
the whole series. Go ahead. Sorry.
But that is one key thing that we do learn about his character, and one
Yeah.
other is that he's a mnemonic. He actually basically has the photographic memory.
Yeah.
He does not forget.
Yeah, he learns
Despite
everything.
anything done to him, he won't forget.
Which I think is a really cool element of this book. So, there's the Kalamcharka, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Kalachakra.
Kalachakra, thank you. The people that are reincarnated to their same lives and have memories of them. But for most of those people, they don't have an indefinite memory, which makes sense.
Correct,
If you're actually immortal in this capacity, where you're living the same 72-year life thousands of times, eventually your brain just literally couldn't handle that much data.
Now, we should clarify that they
Right.
do remember everything that happened in their previous lives. It's just that eventually, with as much knowledge,
there's
they would
too
start to
much
forget the
information.
beginning
Exactly.
lives and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The impression I got was that it kind of fades out, where like
Yeah.
maybe somebody can remember 6 of their lives, but then if the 7th life is kind of fuzzy and they don't remember what happened in the 8th
Right.
life, and they might have had 1,000 lives, but that's the extent to which they
Right.
can remember back.
But in the same way that, like, I think about Alzheimer's as being one of the most challenging things to forget life's memory, toward the end, how challenging that must be for that whole population of people who that is the one benefit they have, is they get to keep reliving, aka they get to keep building memories and then also remembering what's happened. And then to lose that, like how challenging that would be for the identity of a Kalachakra.
I think I would prefer that over the mnemonic if there was no rite of exit. So in the book, one of the things that she determines is that if you are in this universe that Claire North has concocted, if you are a Kalchakra and you are somebody comes back and aborts your pregnancy while you're in the womb, you're done. You're extricated
That's
from
final
the
death.
timeline.
Yeah.
So there is a way. Everybody theoretically has a way. If you could convince another Kalchakra to come back and take you out, you
Right.
could eventually commit
Right.
suicide. If that weren't there, however, if it was a Bill Murray situation where you're just trapped there indefinitely, I would definitely want to have that like outer wall of memory to where like I'm like I only ever have to live 7 lives.
Yeah. Well, they also had the other way. So that is why the what you just mentioned, the most closely guarded secret that any Ouroboran's going to have is they don't ever give up the place or direct time or their actual parents, their true lineage. They
Right.
never share that information because of exactly what you said. They could just be aborted in utero, right? But then there's the other thing, which is the forgetting, where they actually can have a device placed on them, built and made by the Cronus Club, that actually does more or less just jiggle it all
Right.
up, scramble it
Which
up
would
like
also
an
be
egg,
good.
and
So then you
helps
can,
to
you can tap
exactly.
out
You get a
whenever
fresh
you want
start.
to. Right.
Yeah, you forget that you're more or less immortal in a sense. You're immortal, and you have to go back and keep living that. But then you'd have that adolescence where you learn that in the second and third life, and the pain of that, like how Harry, when he learns that he is going back inside of a 4-year-old body with a much older mind, the challenges all that would present.
Yeah. Well, he
and it
starts
makes
to
sense that he
remember
goes-
when he's 3 years old. He starts to remember everything back from his other lives, which is insane.
Yeah.
I've been around a lot of my nieces and nephews at 3 years old, and to think that they're starting to like remember everything about their lives right then is kind of insane.
You know what? I could
Yeah.
see my second cousin Jance. I could see him being one of those. Jance is
very
like,
bright.
How old is Jance now? Jance is like, I think, in late middle school or early high school. But when I
And
got
also
back from
780.
he's also he might well be. The first conversation I had with him, because I was gone in between when he was born and when he learned to talk, I was out of the country. So the first time I had a conversation with him where he was like 5 and could converse, I was like, oh, like 5, like you're starting school, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to kindergarten, and I was like, oh, cool, like are you worried about math? And he just deadpan went, I'm more worried about calf prices. And I was like, you're 5 and you're worried about the commodities market? This is more intense adulthood than I have ever experienced in my life. So I could see somebody like him. That wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't shake me to the core to find out that Jance is a couple hundred years old.
What you didn't hear him say was, I'm more worried about the calf prices in the year 2222.
That
and
would
I was like, oh, okay. So that makes sense then.
Giveaway.
Yeah. Dead giveaway.
On the note of children that are multiple hundreds of years old, one of the really cool devices in this book is the ability to play phone tag up and down the time-space continuum.
Yeah.
Yes.
I thought that was just such an amazing literary device.
And how they do it, where it begins in, I believe, the first or second chapter, where it is the child telling the older person on
Right.
their deathbed, and messages are shared backwards in time in order to, it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, and it took me a while to kind of wrap my head around that. That
Me too.
you would like come into your own. You're 4 to 7 years old. You have these memories all of a sudden. You're like, oh, I'm supposed to track down some geezer. You track him down, and you're like, hey, Bert said thanks for the recipe or whatever, and then that guy dies, and now all of a sudden, in his mind or in his universe, he's now being reborn in 1880.
Exactly.
And so you're able to
Exactly.
transfer that message back. Yeah.
Well, it's also,
And when
I
he hits
think,
about 3 and can speak, then he can share the message. Yeah.
and then there's also a lot sent forward through time as well, in like newspapers or random places
Well, and
where they
things
manage
hidden,
stones and things where they
Exactly.
hide them. Yeah.
And occasionally they screw up the time-space continuum because there's a... Oh, gosh, Nick, I didn't look this guy's name up. His name is it's with a J, I think. It's like Jorgen or something. But he's the guy that in like the 14th century starts... he sort of strikes up a deal.
Yes, I know who you're talking about.
With people in the future where he's like, I'm going to leave these really cool historical artifacts, but what I would really love from you is if you could get some information back to me via this telephone system about like how wind power works and like propulsion engines work and stuff. And then he like develops all of this technology from the 21st century. It like shows up to, I think it's the Holy Roman Emperor, and it's just like, hey, do you want to advance 900 years into the future? Here you go. And they end up having to destroy this man because he introduces atomic warfare to France by 1540, just because he's kind of bored, I guess, or he just wants to see how fast he can accelerate the timeline.
He wanted to be God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
in
it
the
is-
same way that another character, wants
it
to.
is a very, foreboding, soon to happen thing, but we're seeing it kind of in a far away look, and then we see it up close, where it's the advancement of technology to a point where you can do anything.
Well,
And,
the playing God bit, Ashland, I assume you're referencing Vincent, right? The other
I
major
am.
character in this. I think this is the best frenemy novel I've ever read.
Yes, I know, right?
Yeah.
Like you just can't give each other up. It's like the worst. They're too bonded.
Yeah, well, and the emotional interplay is great because like there's a wonderful line towards the end of the book. So I mean, without spoiling anything at the very beginning, I guess this spoils a little bit, but people would figure this out pretty quick. The opening line before the first chapter is like, "I wrote this book for you," or something like that. So you know that it's a missive over the course of the work.
I thought he was just talking about me.
To Nick Sperdute.
Me I thought like it was just like the
Dear
reader.
Clara
I
North,
wrote this
thank you for
reader.
having your character write to me, Nick Sperdute. I really enjoyed it. Love, Nick.
Okay, well now I'm gonna have to get rid of that email, but it felt right at the time. God, she's gonna think I'm so stupid.
There's a moment in one of his lives where Harry August is he is in the know with Vincent. They're both working towards making the quantum mirror. And he says, like, this was the most fulfilling period of my life. This was the most creatively stimulating and professionally rewarding period of my life. And it's like
you can tell that life, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something like that.
You can tell that he does really like Vincent. He their chemistry is very good. That their conversation, their ability to complement each other. Yeah, their ability to intellectually complement each other is really good. It's just that Vincent is kind of evil. And so they can't, like, they're kind of, I kind of get like a vibe of Professor X and Magneto.
Magneto.
Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah.
I like that, yeah. Well, especially because, I mean, this is not the first life in which they met. They learned that each other was Ouroboran at a point in which Harry is a professor and Vincent is years younger than him. Let's call it a decade, probably more like 7 years younger, is a student. And that's how they first, like, he finally has that intellectually stimulating conversation. For the first time, there's somebody who can speak to him at that level because he's now so many hundreds of years old technically, and he's so intelligent because he studied physics and he was a doctor and this, and he doesn't forget. So all of that just creates a superpowered brain, more or less. And now he's found his match, right?
Right.
They have a toxic friendship, but it is fascinating in which they keep aligning.
Not to correct you, Ashley, but I'm going to correct you.
Mm-hmm. Go for it.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Let's hear it.
No, but I don't think that he finds out he's Ouroboran at that point. He finds out he's Kalachakra.
He hit him in the face.
Well, he finds out because he's part of the Cronus Club, but he doesn't find that he. Yeah, okay. So, but the other detail that I was questioning in this book was when we find out that we know the whole time, obviously, that Harry never forgets anything. We find out Vincent.
He never shares that.
Yeah, we find out Vincent's the same way, but Harry never shares that to Vincent. And I think there was one moment in there where I don't remember what life it was or what chapter or whatever.
He almost told him.
Where it feels
was in Russia. He almost told him. It was on the tip of his tongue. He even started saying it, and he stopped himself. Yeah. He held back. Yeah.
That's fascinating. There's a lot of little moments like that where it feels like everything's about to be given away, sort of.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't happen quite. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you guys make of Vincent? What is the... Is he, because he's likable, he's kind of charming, although I do get very, like, I really feel viscerally when Harry August comes back and pretends to not know what's going on, because over the course of the book, Vincent's creating this thing called the quantum mirror, and we don't quite know what it is, but
it allows him to see. He basically becomes God because he can see the purpose of why. The only question somebody cannot answer in their capacity is why.
However, the construction of said device is ruining the timeline forward, because is it because it's taking all of the resources from it, or
no? It's because they don't technically have the ability to do that in the time period in which they live, so they have to force technology to become more and more they're rapidizing technology to a point where by like the 1960s people had like microwave, like crazy physics, that particle physics, exactly, things that did not exist, and that's because they keep, and he remembers all the technology, so as he comes back he does it 10 years earlier and 10 years earlier, and that's what's destroying the fabric of society.
That's the other thing that is the reasoning behind this is they don't really have the ability to make themselves live longer at all.
And you're stuck. If you tap out at 72, that you pretty much always tap out at 72.
One time Harry lived a little longer because he saw the aughts for the first time and saw the Twin Towers fall and all that. Only once in his 15.
Yeah, but with Vincent though, like I'm trying to pinpoint, or I'll say that the bit that I really felt for Harry August is when Harry August has been, he says, I'm breaking with you, Vincent, you're ruining the timeline, all this stuff, and Vincent tries to wipe his mind clear, thinks that he succeeded, and so now Harry August has to pretend that he doesn't remember anything, and every lifetime Vincent thinks he's wiped his brain again and keeps using him, and Harry August is very good at playing this role, and he becomes like kind of the henpecking accountant, where he's like, oh, Vincent, like, I'm glad you're having fun. I sure wish you'd be more careful about all the bolts you're ordering. And I know that relationship of like the person that knows that they get to like, the person who very well knows that it's their job to throw stuff around the room and ruin the carpet, and that it's their friend's job to clean up the carpet, and just being completely devil may care about it. Like, I know that relationship, and I was like, now I hate you, Vincent, because you're a dick.
I hated Vincent when the wife that y'all are referring to that Harry loved so much was Ginny, and Vincent is clearly just trying to test, has this forgetting in fact worked, or he's just being the gigantic asshole, one or the other, and he marries the woman that Harry has always loved, Ginny.
Yeah, which is
a
real power move. Like that is a strong move right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is he, so in terms of his evilness, is he evil because he's just amoral, like he doesn't care about, he's not vicious, but he doesn't care about the effects of what he does, like he's sort of,
I think he is vicious,
unconcerned, or is he, or is it an actual malice that's coming out of him?
Because he goes
I don't think it's malice. I think
he destroys so many people just so that they can't prevent him to doing what he wants to do.
Right.
And I mean, you have to be vicious in a certain sense to just be willing to destroy that many people that can come. I don't know. I mean,
right.
Just seems
I
like
don't disagree. Right, I don't disagree with that, but he is trying to pursue knowledge so strongly that nothing is going to get in his way. And so in his mind, I don't think he thinks he's evil. He is just ruggedly in pursuit of why? Why do we exist? Which, I mean, we as people are always rabidly trying to figure out what is the meaning of our lives, why do we exist? So if anything, it's like this existential crisis that he just can't live with the answer of no and not knowing. So he's just too driven to find the answer.
Well, you said a moment ago that the purpose of the quantum mirror is to discover the purpose of life. That bit did elude me a little bit. Like, it's fine if it's a MacGuffin. I don't mind it being a MacGuffin. It's okay. It's a very, like, I get the idea of the mad scientist that just wants to build a bomb for the sake of building a bomb. We've got to stop him. I get that. But I never quite figured out why the quantum mirror was such a worthwhile pursuit. Because it was...
I agree with you.
Was it kind of like breaking... It's like he basically was going to, like, unify quantum theory and macro theory or something?
No, it doesn't even seem that. It literally seemed to be almost like Douglas Adams, the reason in which Earth was created was to be the ultimate question with the answer. The answer was 42, but the question was never made.
You construct this quantum mirror, and then God comes down and he's like, hey, it's about golf or whatever the thing is, and then like comes up and you're like, oh, good. Like, glad we built that mirror.
Yeah, that part was a little unclear because, like, why does it have to be a quantum mirror? Like, how do you know in advance that is the thing that's going to give you the why? That does not make sense. But I will trust in her just the logic of the book that in this world, sure, this is going to give you the answer of why. Cool.
And I think it's just a dark MacGuffin. I mean, the phrase quantum mirror very much sounds like science fiction gobbledygook to me. I don't think there's any actual significance to it other than it sounds kind of spacey.
We could also be very wrong. Maybe it is a thing.
That's also true.
Maybe so. I mean, like, you remember, so last time we did this, I reached out to M.R. Carey, who listened to the podcast and was like, that was great. Can I come on the show? And so
love that.
I'll see if Claire North, I'll do the same thing. And maybe we could become friends with everybody that we read. And Claire North will come on and be like, oh, you completely missed it. It's all of these things involving quantum mechanics. Did you not read the appendix? And we're like, no, I didn't.
And I also love that he was a quote on her book. M.R. Carey.
Oh, nice. I didn't even realize that. You know what? That's probably how I found it.
An astonishing reinvention of the time travel narrative, bold, magical, and masterful. I just also love how we're always going to talk about M.R. Carey. Is that like,
no? This is also doubly good because if M.R. Carey comes on and we hit it off, I'll be like, hey, by the way, are you buddies with Claire North? Would she want to come on the podcast? Because Ashland also really likes her as well, and Nick says she's okay. So I think like maybe that she would have fun coming on.
I thought Nick already feels like he's been spoken to personally by her, so it's perfect.
That's true.
Nick, Nick,
you mean by Catherine Webb writing in the name of Claire North?
That's true.
Whoa.
Pseudonym.
Yeah.
Come on.
That's somebody just got an A+ on this book
Someone
report
did some
here.
research today, this morning.
Okay, well, so I want to touch on a couple of themes, and then I want to just kind of spin off into what we would do in this particular universe. So, like I said, I think a big theme of the book is letting go. You know, and like I mentioned, the being unable for him to let go of his wife, the parental abandonment. He also has a difficult time letting go of grudges, and it's interesting because he kind of has like a Bill Murray. Like Bill Murray meets Taken kind of thing in him, where he's friends with a prostitute, she's murdered, and so he systematically goes and kills the serial killer in future lives before he can kill anybody.
Life.
Every single time.
Except for one.
When he gets killed.
He misses.
Yeah. But it felt Groundhog Day-esque to me of like, 8 o'clock, gotta go shoot that guy in the head.
It just felt more like justice. Like he knew that this was a wrongful death that did not need to happen. And he just
it was also multiple deaths. It becomes a serial killer. So
like a Jack the Ripper thing.
Which is very much what I thought where they were going, so it made sense.
I don't fault him for doing it, but I wonder how much of it is like visceral versus how much of it is preventative.
I do think that the first time he went and just like made sure that he was going to do it again.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because he was curious about it or questioning. And then every other time he wouldn't even take that precaution. He mentions that he just went to his room, would sit there and shoot him.
Well, I mean, you do know at that point too. It's it would be an interesting change of events to be like, no, in this particular timeline, because one of the other people in the Kronos Club, doesn't go to World War I. The guy just becomes a banker instead of a serial killer. It's like maybe, but there seems to be enough enough latency, and I think even when he kills him, like he's about to shoot him, and he's like, I haven't even done anything yet. Because he's aware of why he's about to be murdered. And he's
it's like the cognition crimes. What was that?
Precogs.
Minority Report?
Yeah, Minority Report, yeah.
What is what's the character's name, just to the point you're making about letting go? Was it Akenlee? Is that her name?
Akenlee.
Where she...
Oh, right.
Yeah, we meet her more or less as a jaded Ourobro, and she's lived so many different lives to the point where she's just having heroin binges and just enjoying all the fun. And she chooses to undertake the forgetting because she realizes her life has no meaning now. She's just been... laissez-faire and having too much fun with life to where she has no feeling anymore.
Right.
So it is also about letting go of those memories to start over.
Right. Yeah. We'll get into the psychological implications here in a second.
Can I say one thing about that character?
Sure.
I think that's one of my favorite parts of the whole book. Is that actually the line when she talks to Harry and she says, "Did you know my former self?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Did she make the right choice? Like, should I have forgot?" Mm-hmm. And he's like, yeah,
you were pretty miserable. You were like hanging out on that boat, like tricking
women
like a
into
nice
drowning of, like,
for fun.
Because that shows how curious, like, even when you're not sure and you make a choice, it's like, was that the right choice? Mm-hmm. And you're even questioning your former self on the matter at hand, even though you have no context to it.
I think one of the other themes that I see in the book is sort of the morality of interference, of having to weigh when should I jump into a situation, and if I do, what are the unintended consequences of this going to be? In a way that we don't have to deal with in Groundhog Day, but we do deal with in this particular book.
Right. In the same way that because Harry has decided to kill whatever that guy's name is, he was always killing Rosemary DeWitt was her name, but I don't remember his name. But now he always has to intervene in every subsequent life. He's going to have to make sure that he is in the right place at the right time to make sure to kill this man because he has decided to more or less be her guardian.
That's weighty because you've now got a permanent, eternal chore that you've got to do. Sure. And if you skip a life, you know that she's going to get whacked. And a bunch of other people are. It's like, this is way worse than like forgetting to pick up Nick from the airport that one time. This is like Nick gets killed for an entire lifetime.
Yeah, which is fascinating because then now you just have like moral commitments that you have to keep repeating.
Yeah.
It has locked you into a morality cycle.
Can we just talk
Nick
about
has
that?
not let it go.
No,
and this is why I
convened
you guys, was to talk about letting it go. Nick, this is an intervention.
Exactly.
Claire North doesn't exist. Ashland and I wrote this book
The
together
book is not real.
in order to get you to confront
That would be
this.
very impressive, and I would give you guys a lot of credit.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Nick,
Ashland.
can you forgive him?
I interrupted you for that joke. I apologize.
It was worth it. No, I enjoyed it. The joke was worth it. No, I was just talking about the morality cycle. It now consists you to a moral calendar that you have to just always have to be present for.
You'd kind of have to you'd have to be careful what sort of commitments you made because it's like once you do that, you would be very aware of the consequences of reneging on such a commitment.
Exactly.
But it's a big deal to have to murder somebody every lifetime. I mean,
exactly. But also in one of them too, I think it's the second life, so just after the first, because in his first life he served in the military and then there were kind people to him. Then in his second life he then warns, don't be at this place at this time. But he doesn't continue to do that in the way that he always goes back and actually murders somebody. He continues to do that, but he doesn't always pass along the message of like, don't be here at this time, bro.
Well, in the second life, doesn't he kill himself really young?
Yeah.
I can't remember if that's the third one or the second.
The second life he's reincarnated and
He's
his memories at 4.
Yeah,
I think he kills himself at 7 because he's in an insane asylum, right?
And then that was a rough one.
And then the third life, he's like, oh, this is a pattern now. Like it was one time, and I'm like, maybe I'm crazy. 3 times, and it's like, oh, this is a thing. Got to deal with this. And then he's tortured by the CIA because people realize that he has these abilities.
Yes.
Yeah. And then he gets saved by someone.
Right.
Who then
Victoria, I think.
Well, he gets saved by the one guy first. Or Victoria, then the guy?
She gives him the ability to slice open.
She
slices open his femoral artery.
Yeah, she slips him a knife so he can get out of the torture. Yeah.
Which is also getting out of things is just killing yourself. You just end your timeline early. That's how you extract yourself, which is pretty fascinating.
And then it's just all like and he indicates that the only problem is just that childhood's very tedious if you've already been an adult. Which I would totally relive my childhood once again just to test it out because I feel like I was a lot lighter and happier as a kid, and but it would also I also do remember
but you
that
didn't know about adulthood, so take that back into your 6-year-old self.
Well, and then like just like being like I do remember that period of like once you got a car and you're like, oh man, I can just go anywhere I want. I don't have to call my mom. And then like looking back and going like that sucked when I wanted to go someplace and had to convince people.
That is something that he struggles with. That's something that he figures out every life, like earlier and earlier, until I think maybe the 13th or 14th. I think the 14th because he's trying to play like he doesn't know, so he goes through it step by step again, which sounds miserable. But every other life he talks about just always trying to look older. And always
and the
trying
Cronus
to
Club
just
actually has the extraction plan.
Yes,
they come in
they give him a
pretending to
scholarship
be
or something so that he can
exactly scholarship to a school, and he gets to be extracted from his life and doesn't have to deal with the banality of being 7.
Right. Yeah. But like to go back to the dying as a means to escape torture.
Correct.
There are so many psychological implications of being an Ouroboran, of being an immortal that's reincarnated into this. So like death is just annoying. It's not like it might be painful and you're having to reboot the game, but it doesn't have finality to it at all unless you're actually killed. But you don't know that you're going to be killed when this, or you're going to be removed from the timeline.
You would never know.
God, I'm so sick of this conversation.
No, Nick, no. The book was fake. I told you. It wasn't real. Don't do it,
Nick. Like he thought.
And then I'm back in the same exact spot.
But the other thing I was thinking about was that there would be really cool things to this kind of life, in that you, like the upshot would be that like we talk about, time is precious. Time is the only resource you can't get back. It is in that circumstance. You could totally just waste a life if you felt like it. If you're like,
they say that's the biggest problem. The Cronus. He mentions this is the line from it. He says the biggest problem we have is that we waste too much time.
Right.
Like we have all this time, but we just waste a lot of it, and it's not for
because time's not a constraint anymore.
Yeah. But it would also fundamentally alter, I think, how you interact with loved ones. Like, so let's say, like my parents are in good health, thank God, but they're in their late 60s and early 70s. So like I'm aware that they're getting older, right? But if I were an immortal like this, there would be no sense of like someday they're going to be gone. It would be there'll be a period where they're not around, and then it's going to reboot. I'm going to like everyone in my life that I know and love, I will always be able to see again in the capacity that I know and love them. And so like death would be much less. Like, it wouldn't even be like they're in heaven kind of thing. It would just be like, they're in timeout. They're going to be back in 15 minutes.
Right. But that would also be a hard thing, because then you're remembering all the challenges you experienced, those hard moments, the great moments, and then they have no memories of you at all, and they have to be rebuilt.
Right. Yeah.
So the challenge of
Oh, no, yeah. I was just going to say, especially in a situation like his where it's always miserable. To start his life, and many of them, it seems like almost all of them have very negative upbringing, except for maybe Vincent, who has a rich father. But primarily, it's what you find out. But primarily, it seems like they mostly grow up with really crappy lives and have to kind of deal with that every time. Yeah.
But even if they didn't, like, I'm thinking that it would fundamentally alter your relationships, because like, so Harry August has great respect for the man that adopts him, and appreciates that even though that this guy is kind of stoic, he's the only father figure he ever had. This man stepped up and took responsibility for him, gave him a life, and even though he wasn't super warm, Harry August really appreciates it, and he even says I meant to tell him this, and he hasn't got around to it. In 15 lives, he's not actually said that. And I would think that, the first life, he was probably very attached to this man because he was going through his actual childhood. But after that, and
he stayed there, and he lived the life. He followed what was the dad's job, and he lived out the occupation his dad had.
Right.
So he very much followed in the footsteps.
But then after that,
his adoptive father. We should say adoptive father. Yeah.
But after that, he's already done it, so he doesn't want to go through all of that again. So the people in your life that you're like, oh yeah, we totally did that. We were super close. But now I got to go do this thing. I'm going to go giraffe hunting as a 10-year-old because I'm bored. But like now, all of those people don't know you anymore because they don't have any of those memories. They have none of that emotional connection to you. You're just this kid that popped off and started talking about calf prices, and then left and joined the circus or whatever. But you don't have that rapport that they have.
Exactly.
And I would think it would be very alienating too, because like Ashland, you brought up, you've got all these memories they don't have. So you're like, it would be difficult to interact. It would be because they're cogent, they're coherent, but you'd want to cite things all the time of like, oh, remember when we had that one Christmas? Oh no, that was 3 lifetimes ago. You don't remember that.
You don't remember.
Yeah.
I wasn't here for that one. Yeah, and then you also also largely could explain his codependency on Vincent. That's the other person who would get it. I mean, Vincent is equally interested in the pursuit of knowledge that Harry is. So they have that shared
and he
interest
can
in
remember
sentiment.
conversations
They're
from
not wasting their time.
2 lifetimes ago. So
and they both are mnemonic.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Of course, Harry pretending to be Vincent being outright.
Yeah. I think, that's very much the whole, what draws the club, is just always finding like minds that you can share this experience with.
I would think that a side effect of this would be that you would have zero fear of commitment. Like if you're planning to live 1,000 lives or whatever, and you're like, you just meet somebody pretty cool, you're like, let's get hitched. Worst case scenario, I guess we get a divorce. Mid-level scenario, I just wait it out. I don't really like conflict. I'm just gonna run out the clock and die and then redo this.
That's something my aunt was saying earlier, actually. She was just telling a story about a friend who he's in his 60s and is getting remarried. And she's like, well, forever's not as long as it used to be. So it's like, oh,
right. Yeah. I think that's one of the, like, I've met a couple of people in their 90s that get married in their 90s, and like they do it very different because they're like, well, the flag still salutes. There's just not as many parades. Like it's not sexual, and it's like very companionship oriented. And then there's also like, if I screw it up at 6 years, I don't care.
Exactly.
Like what? Use a condom? Fine, I'll get herpes. I don't give a shit. Like what? Like what am I? Like is AIDS gonna take me out? I'm 95. It's like a very very different mindset.
Exactly. This would be the kind of book that would probably be interesting. Like, what's the adage with Don Quixote? You're supposed to read it 3 times in your life as a youth. Then like middle age, kind of our age, and then older age, because you just get different lessons from it. I wonder if this book has a lot of that to it, just because, looking back on it, if you're in your 70s, it's like, yeah, okay, I'm ready to let it go.
I totally get that. Like, I feel like this book would have been great to have encountered in college, because I feel like in college, at least I felt this, not a pressure, but I was so aware of the diverging pathways forward in my life. Like life is nothing but opportunity.
Right.
I have no restraints. I have no responsibilities. I can go this way. I can do this thing, or I can do something completely different. And I was so aware of it, and a little bit stressed about making the right decision. And I feel like this would have been an interesting book to read of somebody that actually goes and tries all these different things, has a life where he's just every religion, has a life where he's a scientist, has a life where he's a soldier. I think it would have been interesting. And then, to do it on the flip side and look back and think about the decisions he made and the decisions you made would also be interesting.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, okay.
I concur.
If you guys were if you guys were thrust into the situation, if you were Ouroboros, what would you be worried about in this life? Like, I would be worried that I'd get bored.
I'd like to ask you a question first before we do this. Are we doing it from our time, like right now? So when I was born in 1991, because I do think it changes so much in comparison to like when it's set.
Right.
Yeah, because if you're born in like
technology
1300, you're going to be bored regardless. There's nothing you could do.
You're just not going to be, so it is about, I mean, you could find things, I'm sure, but and you're probably going to die at like 25.
Oh man, that would suck if you were born in like 1880 and like you always die right before like television's invented, and people are like, oh, have you not watched TV? It's great. You haven't seen it? It's amazing. Have you seen porn? You haven't seen porn either? And like there's like something just out of reach.
Yeah,
like for us, I don't know what it would be. It'd be like, oh, you've never been on a hover car? They're great. Like, seriously, you've never been?
Your car never floated?
Yeah, like
you had to drive on the ground.
You've been to the moon, though, right? Like you totally like do lunar. Oh, you don't? Oh, when'd you die? Oh no, you died the year before lunar tourism. Oh, that sucks. It's so cool.
That would be fat. Or like you're in the 1920s. It's like depression again.
Yeah. Oh, great. Super.
Great. Prohibition. Great.
That's
awesome.
Maybe
that's his
maybe
deal.
this time Hoover will fix it. Maybe this time the dam will work.
I fought in World War II in seven times or whatever, right? And so he like
exactly
eventually just goes back and fights the war again and over again and
maybe
sees
this
all
time
this
I'll
stuff
switch.
happen.
Well,
I realize they're evil,
character.
but I'm curious. Yeah, there is that guy. That
character who's the warmonger. I mean, he's not a bad person, but he just loves war. That's what gives him fulfillment in life. Exactly. Yeah, it's just a war junkie. Which, I mean, maybe that's part of your question too, right? Like, you, I guess, maybe play to just one element of yourself. Like that guy is just a little bit one note, just always finding war to be like, oh, I want to feel something. This makes me feel alive. So that probably would be a challenge. You'd like, in order to feel alive, what would you do? Would you be a thrill seeker? Would it have to be all about adrenaline and adventure? Like, how would you actually make use of that time? Because I would have a hard time giving up that. Like, I would still want it to be something. I want to be furthering and helping. So like, maybe you write this magnum opus, maybe you whatever. Well, in your next life, it's not going to be there. So like, there's just nothing profound that you can create because it's wiped away when you come back.
No, that's a good point. The only thing that you could actually bring with you are memories and skill sets and knowledge. So it would make sense to like learn languages or learn how to play instruments and things like that.
Unless you create this magnum opus, you have it recorded, you pass it on to an older person, and they bring it back before, and then you keep it until you're like 14 and you're a wonderkin.
Wilbur,
and
how
then
good's
you
your
put
memory?
it out again.
But what if now in society that doesn't land as well because so much of it is luck and timing and other things?
Yeah.
So, you know,
How
there
good
is
your
no sense of
Twitter profile is.
Yeah.
So very broad question, and I don't know the answer to this. If you
Yes,
guys,
I would destroy Twitter.
yeah, oh no, I would do that right now. I would do that in any circumstance. That's great. Twitter's
Every
good for.
time.
Here's what Twitter's good for. It's good for coordinating flood relief and bringing down Egyptian regimes, and there's no other benefit to it. It is horrible. I can't wait until that thing is just cast into the dustbin of history, and everybody realizes they've been making the world worse by screaming on it.
Well, it's going to be a lot less of a deal once the leader of our nation isn't a Twitter person.
Doesn't use that as his key.
Like, that's the craziest thing in the world is that he made it's not just that he tweets a lot and it's like, oh, that's crazy that he tweets a lot, but the fact that he tweets a lot and that made everybody have to tweet a lot.
Right.
Is
Right. What if Donald Trump is Ouroboran?
Oh God.
Oh, I would shoot
That would
myself
explain
right
a
in the
lot, though,
forehead.
wouldn't it?
It would actually.
If Donald Trump is this really smart dude who's just very bored and he's like, this time I guess I'll be president. Last time I was Pope.
Yeah, last time I just had some hotels.
Yeah,
Let's just
like,
shake
yeah,
it up
worst
this time.
The time
one.
before that, I was a sheep herder. Really got into sheep herding. Went through a bird watching phase in my third life. But yeah, I'm gonna try out being a president. It's a lot easier than I thought. Yeah. No, the question I was going to lob at you, and I don't know the answer to this. If you were, if you realized that, or let's say you wake up and you're in Ashland and Nick's lives respectively, and you
Wait,
realize
I'm
that
in
you're
hers and she's
Nope,
in mine?
You're in Nick's life.
Okay.
None of us ever get to be Ashlands except Ashland. It's one of the pains that we have in existence.
Jesus.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, it must be great. Must be nice,
Why did I
Ashland.
even
Must
come
be
here?
nice.
Is there anything that you guys would do if you woke up? What would you do in your next life? Not in this life, but if you woke up and you realized that you were born, what would you alter?
I would have tried, like, I love what I studied. I love the lifestyle that I created. I love all that. But I would be curious, what happens if I didn't pursue political science? What if I had done this instead? What if I had taken exactly like you were talking about in college, that age where everything feels like a branch and any decision you make, you feel like you can't go back to where it was. You just have to continue down a branch just to take a different limb and see what it would have done.
Yeah.
Like, where would I have gone in life? What would have been different this time around? Who would I have met? Would there be some of the same people? That'd be fascinating, if other than family, because you're more or less stuck in that container.
Yeah,
sure.
But it'd be interesting to see like what 2.0 would have done. What would I have done differently? What would I be impassioned by? Would it be the same thing, actually? I don't know. Be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I think first things first, soon as I'm born and start to remember, and then, well, I'll wait a couple years because he wasn't born yet, but then as soon as I can, I'm going to go search out Andrew's giraffe hunting Barnum and Bailey nephew, and because I'm pretty sure he's also one, so
Right.
I'm gonna go and just coordinate with him just
Yeah.
so that we're in a group.
Hey, Jance.
So you want him to
Chernobyl.
be your Vincent? You're just going to keep
He's
having
gonna be
him
my
as your
Vincent, yeah.
Vincent.
And I'm gonna keep erasing his memory.
So you're his Vincent.
I'm his Vincent. I would be the Vincent in this scenario, I think.
Clearly.
Yeah. No, honestly, I think I would be really nervous for the first like 4 lives if this was
Yeah.
gonna repeat. Like after
Right.
the first
Right.
life, I'd be like, okay, so this might just be a 2-time
Maybe this is
thing.
a filing error. Maybe St.
Yeah.
Peter
Is it a
like
cat?
took
Do you get 9 lives?
Yeah.
How many
Yeah,
do you
some,
get?
some,
exactly.
some
So-
angel like took off early on a Friday, and for some reason I got rebooted. We don't know if it's going to happen every time.
Unless someone came to me like they came to him and were like, no, this is what happens. Like, you will be this way. Because that's pretty clear when there's a club and there's never an instance
Yeah.
of someone
It's
only living 4 lives.
organized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So once I figure that out, then I'd be a little bit more. But I think for the first one, I'd be like, all right, I got to live this all the way through again and just try to make things different and happen. And then for the third life, I'd be like, Okay, well, I guess now I can really explore, but I would still, I think, be concerned enough that I wouldn't go too outside of, like, an absurd radar and just, like, try to be, like, getting technology that hasn't existed yet and all that stuff. I think I would be more trying to be in a
Bitcoin,
rock band or
just
something.
Buy as much Bitcoin as you can the second it comes out.
It's like, I think just working on being famous, I think I would just try to live those lives and just use everything I have and make sure I meet some of the people that I met and then tell them everything about themselves to really freak them out.
Yeah, Nick, you could super fuck with me.
Like, I would
enough
really
about me now that you could
Andrew.
just,
like,
hey,
there
I
would
can read your...
be... I would, oh my God. I'd call him up, I'd be like, hey, and he'd be like, hello? And I'd be like, hey, you don't know me, but I think you were born in Edmond, Oklahoma, and you went to school in Norman, Oklahoma? Is that ringing a bell?
And I think you're going to forget to get me from an airport once. It's going to be a whole thing.
And it's LaGuardia! By the way, tell the judge I said hi. That's what I'm going to do. And you're going to freak out. You're going to go nuts.
Yeah, I'd be like, apparently I've got a stalker. And I was supposed to, but he told me to buy Bitcoin, whatever that is. I don't know.
And he said, don't move to California, whatever you do.
Yeah, he said I'm supposed to worry about some dude named COVID. What? I don't even know COVID.
I don't know anybody named COVID.
Yeah, I guess I'll watch my back. Thanks, Nick. Yeah, I think if I knew that if I knew that it was going to be a repeating thing, it was going to go on a while, I think I would be less of a dilettante. I think I've got like some weird fear of commitment on a variety of levels. It's difficult for me to live in one location for a long time. I've jumped around careers a bunch. I'm not sure what that is. I suspect it would be assuaged slightly if I knew that I was immortal, and I would go, this life I'm just going to get really, really, really good at comedy. Or this next life I'm just like, nope, I'm only going to be in politics. Or this next life I'm going to be an academic. And I just
see. I think you can say
that.
I think you could say that, but I do think like once you've been doing that for 20 years or 15 years, you're going to be like, okay, well, I feel like I did a lot of that, and now I'm kind of bored with it.
But if time is endless, is it going to feel like 15 years, or
Maybe.
is it easy to
That's a
dedicate
good
a whole
point.
lifetime to the pursuit of one thing?
I mean, because they certainly do in the book. That is, I mean, that's definitely something that, like, at the point where he's like, only five more lives, and we'll have this problem figured out.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I mean, I do get that.
Yeah. Just
I think early on I wouldn't.
Right. I hear you.
Yeah, I wonder if that wouldn't alter your perspective on time, because like
I think it would have to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Time has no meaning anymore.
Right.
Time is more like now I'm waiting for things to happen because I'm like, man, when are they going to invent that washing machine? That would be really convenient right about now.
Man, I want
sure
the
I'd be
hover
like,
washing machine.
Yeah, exactly.
I would be screwed for the first one because I'd be like, wait, I was supposed to remember races and who won stuff. I don't remember any like winning things to get money.
My cousin Jance calls you and he's like, hey, did you call them about 9/11? And you're like, oh, fuck, I forgot. I'm so sorry. Did you call them? Oh, okay, next time. We'll try and keep the towers from falling next time. Whoops.
Well, and that's the hard thing, too, is you actually can't interfere with those like milestone signature events. So like
they mentioned that, too.
Yeah.
Convincing you have to convince a bunch of adults. I think she says she has to save a bunch of kids from getting bad or like getting through bad lives, and then she has to convince a bunch of adults not to kill Hitler. I think is what when Akinlay comes back.
I feel like that's a rookie mistake with time travelers. Just go kill Hitler.
That's
the first thing nobody does.
Once she goes through the forgetting and is talking to Harry after, and they're like, and she's starting to help again.
Yeah,
right.
And like be more a member of the club. That she talks about that she's had to go back and help a bunch of kids and then also stop a bunch of adults. Like she's spread out through all these other things because there's not that many members left.
Right. But it seems also like, yes, you'd be altering the fabric of time. You'd be doing all kinds of things if you did go back and kill Hitler and all that type of thing. But you'd also be making yourself in some way a legend or memorable or recognized. You'd be in news reports. And for the most part, they're all pretty low profile.
Yeah,
I mean, yes, he
true.
becomes a professor, but nobody is becoming famous, and probably intentionally, because it would.
Although he does
really
become like Al Capone at one point.
You also know that if
Yeah, but it's all hidden. I mean, nobody really knows he's like a criminal lord.
I do like
but...
that. I think I would give that one a shot. That's like 10
and he's a
lines in.
spy. He's got the espionage one. But like, you can't really ever do anything with a lot of public acclaim, seemingly, because it could negatively draw attention. It could.
And then
Nobody
the
seems
CIA is
to.
knocking on your door and giving you, truth serum and torture to figure out how to build a better Chrysler or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
which almost happens to him in that early life, the fourth or so life, whichever one that was.
Well, if you mess up on your first life and like you do become really famous, and everybody knows your birth at this point, most likely it's on Wikipedia if you're famous.
Oh, good point. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah. Yeah.
I can tell you
where are you
think
from,
he's
William?
born before Wikipedia.
Here and there. I'm from all over. Who are your folks?
Yeah.
I don't remember. Don't put
Little
it
of
in,
this, little of that,
Yeah.
sticks and stones, sugar and spice, all that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what I would. I was surprised that he doesn't just like create a lie that he just like uses every time for like that sort of thing.
Well, he did. I mean, he came up with a brilliant lie at the end.
That's
last
true.
couple to 3 lives, yeah.
And do we want to? Is this the big one that we're talking about, or
No. I'm just talking about how he is setting up the ultimate end, but he has a very elaborate way that he creates an origin story for himself that's grounded in public birth record and all that. So he does a pretty brilliant subterfuge.
Yeah.
Again, because he had also been a spy, he'd been all these things.
Yeah.
And he remembered it all.
Well, gang, I will cap it off there. I feel like we've pretty well exhausted it. And unless you guys have anything else you want to add, Nick.
I have one thing.
Nick has his finger up. Yeah.
Yeah, this is my one thing.
The gavel
I have
recognizes
one thing.
Nick.
Yes, I'd like to be recognized by the court. That they did mention that this is probably going to be a movie.
Oh, really?
Oh, okay.
It was just discussed in, I think, April. And the director would be Wes Ball, who did like the Maze Runner trilogy that weren't great.
About corn?
They were based off of books as well, and they were just okay. No, Andrew.
Like a maze you walk through, not like
No,
it's
the young adult
It's
series?
a book series. Yeah, it's a young
Is
adult
it a young
series.
adult? Yeah,
Yep.
I remember it.
But I will say this: I do feel like this would be a better like Amazon short series.
Trying to compress this into a
short
2-hour
series
movie is
or-
going to suck.
yeah.
It'd have to be a series,
Yeah,
Indie
like
series.
Chernobyl. I feel like it's a good like 6 or 7 episodes.
You're
I mean,
right, 'cause it
mind
is
you,
too
they could
nuanced.
do seasons of this sort of thing. But if you wanted to just keep it to this book instead of like having to go beyond this book, a good like 6 episodes would be great, and you'd be able to explore all of his different lives and just use the same child actors and middle and then
that's a
older
great point.
actors.
You could sort of focus each episode on
and there's a lot of ups and downs in that. And you get to. I think that's kind of a lot of fun.
You could even, what would be fun is like have 15 episodes of this short run series and have dramatically different directors direct every one of them, so that the spy life is like a spy thing. And then like the academic one is, I don't know, you get Bill Nye or somebody, I don't know, I'm not sure, but in any event, like you
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah, Neil deGrasse Tyson. You could alter the flavor of it while
God,
maintaining the continuity.
Bill
The
Nye's
character
movies.
remembers it. Yeah, he's
He's great. Yeah.
Yeah,
He's
he's
great,
good.
yeah. Get Bill Murray in there, cause, for obvious.
I'm with you 100%. I don't think that I feel like at this point Hollywood should just quit converting books into movies because they never work. Rarely do we watch a film and we're like, that was better than the book. So rarely, because if the book's any good at all, they have to compress it so much that it loses everything we love about the book, and it ends up being this kind of farcical abbreviation of a beloved work. So yeah,
Except for The Godfather.
I'm not going to hold my breath on this one.
Touche.
Great. Well, Ashland Viscosi and Nick Sperdute, it was a pleasure to see you both again. Thank you for
having
reconvening book club.
Well, exactly. Thank you for this recommendation. I look forward to the next and the subsequent rejoining you on the book club.
Nice.
I'm looking forward to the 16th through 57th lives.
And
I do wonder
Harry
how
Hog.
many lives there are going to be. It's like, wait a second, first 15, how many do we get? Mm-hmm. I know. That's
now
the
I gotta
mystery.
go
That's what the
find
movie will tell
a
us.
third book that's good. This is going to be tough.
I know. Yeah, you set a high bar, sir.
I will. I can cap it off there. However, do either of you have any place you want to direct people to? Ashland, do you have any projects you're working on or anything that you want to plug?
No, not really. The pandemic has put everything in hibernation.
I thought that was probably the case, but once you're up and doing others, you're always doing amazing stuff. But when you're doing public-looking amazing stuff, let me know, and I'd be very happy to bring you on and plug it and everything. And,
amazing, thank you.
I was
Nick,
going to say,
you want to plug anything to the audience or vagabonding or anything?
Yeah, so come listen to this show and to the vagabonding portion of this show, which we do together.
Yeah, basically
follow me
just
on Twitter,
don't quit
Nick on
listening to
Night.
this show.
That's right. Right, NicholasSperdute.com. Check it out. My reel's on there if you want to book me for a gig.
Actually,
Children's
hold on. Wait,
parties,
Nick, say that again. It's NickSperdute.com. You've got a reel? No, because I say this because there are people on Twitter that think you're a character. That like
I know
because you
know.
and I do vagabonding,
like that, to be honest.
And so they're like, wait, Nick's a person, and I'm like, yeah, but they're like, oh, we thought that was like a character that like some actor portrayed that Heaton wrote, and I'm like, no one could write Nick Sperdute. Nick is his own thing.
Thanks, buddy. That's
so
very
if you're
sweet.
listening to this, you're curious as to what Nick looks like. You could check out his reel, and he's way taller than you think.
Yeah, that's true. In the reel, I'm only like 4 inches tall. That's a very small reel.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Hey, gang! If you want to check out the first 15 lives of Harry August, or any of the other books and films we've discussed on the program, I've conveniently compiled them at mightyheaton.com/goodsci-fi. If you click one, it will take you directly to Amazon. And if you buy it, I get like a nickel or something. So go to mightyheaton.com/goodsci-fi for some other kick-ass sci-fi recommendations. That's the show. Thanks for listening. Thank you, Ashland Viscosi and Nick Sperdute, for coming on to discuss the first 15 lives of Harry August. Thank you, Josh Jennings, for narrating the first chapter of that novel. And thank you, media assistant Eric Stipe, who edited this episode. Until next time, tally-ho!